The fourth night of dedication was the night the patrol came. By then we had 4 lamps in the window. One for the first night, one for the second, one for the third, one for the fourth. That was how Mara's mother had done it in her own house when Mara was small. And Mara had done it the same way since the year we had married. And Eliezer had learned to count to 4 by lamp before he could count to 4 by fingers. Eliezer was on the floor with his face 2 hands from the window shelf. He was watching the lamps. He was not blinking enough. I have always remembered him at that age by the way he failed to blink at small fires. He looked at flame the way other boys looked at fast horses or older girls. He was 4. He had been told the story of the Maccabees 5 times that week, twice by Mara, twice by Mara's cousin Tirzah, who was with us for the festival, and once by me badly, because I had only ever heard the story from other men in wine shops and had gotten the names of the brothers in the wrong order. Mara had let me finish my telling and then retold it. I had not been insulted. I had been impressed by how much of the wrong I had put into a single short story without trying. The room smelled of olive oil and warm wool and the cake Tirzah had brought. The cake was honey and crushed sesame. Tirzah was a baker. Mara was a better cook than Tirzah, and they both knew it, and neither of them ever said so. Tirzah would die 5 years later of a fever. The recipe is gone. Before the song started, Tirzah had brought news. She had come from the upper city the day before. Her cousin's husband worked the donkey line that hauled water up to the priest's quarter, the fastest news in Jerusalem. Tirzah ate her cake before she shared it. She said between bites, "They almost stoned him at the colonnade this week." I had been at the door checking the latch. I stopped. I said, "Stoned who?" She said, "The teacher, the Galilean, the one who was in the courts at Sukkot. The one who saved that woman from being stoned at the same colonnade 6 months ago. They almost stoned him this week at the very same step." I said, "Almost." She said, "Almost. He talked them out of it or walked out of it. Nobody who was there agrees about what happened." The cousin says he asked them which of his works they were stoning him for, and they could not answer, and the moment they could not answer was the moment he walked out of the colonnade with the stone still in their hands. She finished her bite. She said, "They are saying he will not say plainly." Mara from the table said, "Say plainly what?" Tirzah said, "Who he is, whether he is the one. They keep asking. He keeps not answering. They say he keeps them in suspense. They say it is on purpose." Mara said, "What did he say to them this week?" Tirzah said, something about a shepherd and sheep. The cousin had it confused. There was a part about a hired man running away when the wolf came, and a part about how nobody snatched sheep from his hand, and a part about how he and the father were one, and that was the part where they picked up the stones. The shepherd part they could have tolerated. The one part was the part they could not. I closed the door. I did not say anything to Tirzah. I did not say that the woman from 6 months ago had walked past me with her right hand shaking. I did not say that I had seen stones at men's feet that morning, set down rather than thrown. I did not say that the stones that had been set down at the colonnade 6 months ago had been picked up again this week and aimed at the man who had bent and written in the dust. I did not say anything because Tirzah was a baker and not a witness, and her news was for telling, not for being asked about, and I had learned over the years not to give Tirzah anything she could carry back up the donkey line to her cousin. Tirzah said, "You knew already." I said, "I knew nothing." She said, "You knew." I said, "I knew nothing." She said, "You were at the colonnade 6 months ago." I had not told anyone except Mara. Mara had not told Tirzah. Tirzah had read my face from across the room. Tirzah was a better baker of news than of cake, and it was time to stop the conversation. Mara put her hand flat on the table once. That was Mara's signal that a topic was finished. Tirzah took the signal. Tirzah was family-shaped. She knew the table tap. She turned to the window. She started the song. Tirzah was singing softly in the corner. She had a voice that was better than her cake. She sang the song about Judah Maccabee and his brothers, the men of the hammer, the song called them, and the song had a verse about the lamp that had burned 8 nights on 1 night of oil, which the song treated as a fact rather than a story, because in those years the song still felt that way to the people singing it. The song was old. It was older than the Romans. The fact that the men in the song had once thrown out a foreign occupier had not, in one Maccabee's own pages, been a problem. It became a problem only later. It became a problem the moment the song was sung in earshot of a foreign occupier. The trouble with the fourth night of dedication. We had not invited trouble. The window faced our own lane. The lane was a working lane, the kind of lane where the people across the way knew our voices and would not have reported us for singing about hammermen in their own grandmother's language. The trouble was further down the lane. The trouble was at the corner where our lane met the larger road that ran toward the upper city. The trouble was the patrol that had been pulled an extra round that month because 3 soldiers had been knifed in 3 weeks and Pilate's office had ordered every garrison to walk slower and look harder. The knock came on the second verse of Tirza's song. Mara stopped singing. Tirza stopped singing in the middle of the word hammer, and the word ended in a small sharp inhalation that was not a word. Eliezer did not move. He kept watching the lamps. I went to the door. Mara stood up, I said without turning. Sit. She sat. I told her to sit because the door had to be answered by one body, and the body had to be a man's. I had a sword scar on my left side that a Roman soldier would take as a fact about the householder rather than a question. The scar had been useful exactly twice. The fourth night of dedication was its second use. I opened the door an arm's width. The first thing I saw was hobnails. Roman boots, Capua pattern, fewer nails along the outer edge, more in the heel. Italian-born, not provincial. Boots resoled at least once on this rotation because the leather was the local tanner's. I looked up. He was the decanus. His name was Crispus. I would not learn the name until later. On the fourth night of dedication, he was a uniform with a vine staff in his hand and 4 armed soldiers a body's length behind him in the lane. He said in Greek, "How many in there?" He had not said hello. Romans of his rank did not say hello to a Jew at his door. It was not personal. The omitting of greeting was procedure. Hello implied an exchange between equals. I said in Greek, 5, 2 women, 2 men, 1 child of 4. He said, "Stand back, I will look." I stood back. He came in. The 4 soldiers stayed at the door. I will remember those 4 soldiers' shadows on the lintel for the rest of my life. They did not speak. They did not move. They were doing the thing the Empire had trained them to do at doors. They were being a wall a man could not leave through if the wall did not want him to. The decanus stood inside our doorway. He looked at the window shelf. There were 4 lamps on it. There was a leaser on the floor in front of them. There was Tirza in the corner with her cake knife in one hand and a piece of cake still in the other, because she had been cutting and had not put the knife down before the door knocked. There was Mara at the table with her hands in her lap, the way Mara kept her hands when she did not want them to do the wrong thing without her permission. The decanus looked at the lamps. He said 4. I said yes. He said why 4? I said tonight is the 4th night. He said of what? I said of the festival of lights in Greek, Hanukkah in our language. We light an additional lamp each night for 8 nights. Tonight is the 4th. He said, I know what Hanukkah is. I waited. He looked at the cake. He looked at Eliezer. He looked at Tirza. He looked at Mara. He looked at me. He said, last winter, 3 of these became weapon counts. 2 streets over from here, a house showed lamps. Patrol walked the door. Patrol got 6 knives in 3 soldiers. 1 died at the door, 2 of the wounded later. 8 men this house, same as this house. Lamps in the window, singing. The household had 4 knives wrapped behind the bread shelf. He paused. He said, I am going to ask this room a question. Do you have a knife behind the bread shelf? I said, I have a working knife on the table beside the loaves. I have a small knife in the niche by the lamp. I have the road knife I carried at 15 wrapped in a cloth in a box I have not opened since my son was born. The box is on the upper shelf beside the spice jar. The other knives in this house are kitchen knives in the corner by the basin. I named them all. I named them in the order I would have named them to a Roman quartermaster doing inventory on a market day. I named them because I knew that the only way out of the doorway was through telling more than he asked. A Roman patrol leader expected to find one of 2 kinds of householder, a man who said we have no knives, who was a liar, and a man who fumbled and named the kitchen knives only, who was hiding the road knife. I gave him the road knife. I gave him the box on the upper shelf. His shoulders shifted. The decanus standing in the doorway became, for one breath, a man. Just for one, then the uniform came back. He said, show me the box. I said, yes. I walked across the room. Eliezer turned his head for the first time and looked at me. He had Mara's eyes. He had my scowl. I think in that moment on his small 4-year-old face he had both expressions at once, and the combination of his mother's seeing everything and my own bracing for the blow was the most adult expression he had yet made in his short life, and I have carried it with me since. I reached up to the shelf. I lifted the box down. I set it on the table near where Mara's hands were folded. I opened it. Inside the box was a piece of cloth. The cloth was wrapped around a knife. The knife was old. The knife had not been sharpened since the year Mara and I married. The blade had a rust the color of dried plums in a place where I had not cleaned it well ever because I had not wanted the cleaning to be the kind of act a man does because he is going to use a thing. The decanus looked at the knife. He looked at me. He said, "Sepphoris pattern." I said, "Yes." He said, "Old." I said, "Yes." He said, "Did you use this?" I said, "Once." The man it belonged to was already dead. He said, "Were you 15? I said, 15. He said, "I was 16 when I joined the Legion. My brother was 14 when he died in a quarry in the country we are both standing in. I am not going to take your old knife from your old box on your high shelf in your fourth night of Hanukkah kitchen. I am going to take the cloth because the cloth is a piece of dyed wool and a courier I send back to the garrison with this report needs something in his hand to make the report believable. I am going to write that you cooperated. I am going to put the cloth in a sack and walk out of your door." He paused. He said, "I was also going to break the lamps." He looked at the window. He said, "It is the fourth night of dedication. The song you were singing is the song my second sister sang at our grandmother's funeral last spring, except in her language and not in yours. The Hammermen's song. I do not know the words in your language. I knew the tune from the second verse because tunes do not lie. I was on rotation when my grandmother died. I did not get to light a lamp for her. I did not get to break a lamp for her either. I am tired of breaking lamps in this province for households whose songs are not about Rome." He looked at me. He said, "Give me one of your lamps." I did not move. He said again, "Give me one of your lamps, the one you have not lit yet, the one for tomorrow night. Give me the unlit one." I looked at Mara. Mara was already up. She took the unlit lamp from the row on the shelf. She walked it across the room without hurrying. She handed it to the decanus. He stood there with the unlit lamp in his hand and his vine staff in the other, and he did a thing I have not since been able to describe except by doing it. He raised the lamp to the height of his own face. He turned it slowly in the lamplight from the 4 lamps on the shelf, the way a man turns a coin to see whether it is the one he thinks it is. He set the lamp on the corner of our table. He said, "I will not light it. It is not mine to light. It is yours. But you will light it tonight as if it is the 5th night lamp, even though tonight is the 4th night. You will light it for me, for my grandmother." He looked at Mara. He said, "My grandmother's name was Antonia. She lived in a village I will not name in your house because the name is mine. She made a bean stew. She kept goats. She was buried while I was on rotation, and I have not lit a lamp for her. You will light this one, and you will think the name Antonia while you light it. I will know you have. The patrol will not break your door tomorrow. I will write that you cooperated. I will write that you only had a kitchen knife and an old wool. I will give the report I always give for the houses I do not break." He paused. He said, "And you will dim the other lamps below this one, and you will not sing after the 2nd bell. If I come back tomorrow night and hear singing, I will not be this man again. I am giving you the man you are seeing now once." Mara picked up the spill from beside the shelf. She lit it at the first lamp on the shelf. She walked it to the lamp on the table. She paused. She said in our language, Antonia. She said it carefully, the way a person says a name they did not grow up with and do not want to bend the vowels of. The decanus heard the name. His face did the thing. She lit the lamp. The 5th night lamp burned on our table on the 4th night. The decanus reached for the cloth from the box on the table. He folded it once. He tucked it under his cuirass strap. He inclined his head. The inclination was not a bow. It was the small movement a Roman commander makes when he wishes to acknowledge that a thing has happened without putting it in writing. He turned. He walked out. The 4 shadows at the door turned with him. The hobnails went back up the lane. The lane was quiet for a long time. Tirzah was the first to move. She set down the cake knife. She set down the cake. She sat down on the floor beside Eliezer. Eliezer looked at the new lamp on the table. He said, "Is the new lamp for tomorrow night?" Mara said it was for tomorrow night. "Tonight it is for the Roman's grandmother." Eliezer said, "Why?" Mara said, "Because his grandmother died last spring and he did not get to light one for her, and we have lamps to spare tonight, and lending a lamp does not cost any oil that was not already going to burn." Eliezer said, "Then he is family for a night." Mara said, "He is family for a night." Eliezer said, "Good." He turned back to the lamps. He watched them. He did not blink enough. Mara dimmed the lamps then. She dimmed them by trimming each wick down to a small bead. The room kept its light, but the window did not much. Tirzah ate her cake without singing. We did not finish the song. We sat together, and the cake was good, and the oil burned, and the lamp Mara had lit for Antonia burned on the table at the place where the box had been. Later, after Tirzah had gone home and Eliezer had been put to sleep with his hand still clutching a small piece of cake, Mara came back to the table. She sat across from me. She looked at me for a long time. She said, "You spoke to him the way you used to wish someone had spoken to Hanan." I had not been expecting that. I had wished for 30 years that someone had spoken to Hanan the way I had just spoken to a Roman in my own doorway. I had not noticed I had become a man who could do it. I said slowly, "He would not have listened. Hanan." Mara said, "He would have listened to you." She put her hand on my wrist. She said, "He would have listened to who you are now." I did not have words. Mara said, "I have been watching." I said, "I did not know you were watching." Mara said, "That is the only way the watching works." The lamp Antonia's grandson had asked her to light kept burning. The other lamps had been trimmed low. The lamp on the table burned at full because we had not trimmed it. It was the 5th night lamp burning on the 4th night, and it was burning in a household whose grandmother was not Antonia, for a woman named Antonia who had kept goats in a village a soldier would not name in our house. The lamp burned a long time. Mara and I sat at the table. We did not speak again that night. The decanus's name was Crispus. I learned this much later. A soldier passed through Antioch in my late middle age. He had served with Crispus on the Judean rotation. He said Crispus had finished his rotation and gone home to a town near Capua. He said Crispus had named his second son for his grandmother. The boy had been named Antonius in Latin. I did not tell Mara. She was past asking by then. She had known what would happen with the lamp the moment she had carried it across the room. I lit a lamp on the 4th night of dedication for the next 30 years, and said the name Antonia in my own mouth quietly enough that no one in the household ever asked me